Welcome to Table Talk. This is a short drama written by the Iona community as part of what they describe as off-the-record conversations. In other words, alongside the familiar biblical text, we can prayerfully and imaginatively listen in to the type of conversation that Jesus and his disciples might have had. We join them at the Passover meal, where Jews traditionally reflect on the journey to freedom of their ancestors. In the words that follow, the disciples are invited to reflect on the 3-year journey they have shared with Jesus. So we invite you to pull up a chair as if you were at the table with them. As Jesus asks the same question to each of his disciples, imagine that he is asking you that same question. How might you respond? Let's join the scene with the disciple John acting as the narrator.
It was the end of a busy week. They were sitting at a table in an upstairs room. Some food had been eaten. Some was still untouched. The disciples talked and Jesus listened. Then Jesus talked and the disciples listened. Then Peter said,
Jesus?
Yes, Peter?
When are we going to see your kingdom?
Pardon?
Well, when are we going to see the kingdom that you talk about? I mean, we've been with you for 3 years now, and really, we're none the wiser. I mean, I lost my job for you. I lost all my money. The only thing I wanted to lose was my mother-in-law, but you interfered, so she's still with us. And all this time, you've been talking about the kingdom. When are we going to see it?
You don't think you've seen it?
No. Certainly you did say that it would come like a thief in the night. I'm a very sound sleeper, so maybe I missed it.
Peter, tell me what you remember. Tell me just one thing you remember from the time we've been together.
Ask somebody else and come back to me.
All right. Andrew, what do you remember? Just one thing.
The little boy.
Which little boy?
The little boy with his lunch. The loaves and the fishes. I remember how you said, "Have we any food?" And everybody looked at everybody else. And then he shouted, "You can have my lunch, mister." And everybody laughed, but you took him seriously. And the smile was on the other side of our faces.
What about you, Thomas?
Oh, the little girl.
Which little girl?
You know, the little girl who ran through the crowd. Remember that time you were talking to all the men and they were eyeing each other up to see who looked the most religious? And then the little girl wandered into the middle of them with her face and hair caked in dust and mud. Her mother was going frantic in case she was going to cry or wet herself. But you lifted her up and said, "Unless you're like this little girl, you'll never get into the kingdom." Oh, Jesus, do you remember the Pharisees' faces? Can you imagine them getting excited and not caring about what people thought?
I don't exactly remember you being very enthusiastic when I asked you to hold her, Tom.
Oh, Jesus, I was never good with kids.
And James, what do you remember?
The aggro you gave John and me for asking if we could sit beside you in heaven?
Did I really offend you?
No, it's just that We should never have asked that question. It was my mother who put us up to it.
Mothers are sometimes like that, son. Bartholomew, what about you?
Oh, Jesus. When are you going to call me Bart like everyone else? Bartholomew's my Sabbath name.
Sorry, Bart.
I think I'll always remember the day that you said that prostitutes and tax collectors would go first into the kingdom of heaven.
Why do you remember that?
Because it shocked me. I thought you'd said that just to annoy people. Until I saw you kneeling down beside the girl in the square. And then I remembered what Matthew used to be.
Yes, indeed. So Matthew, what do you remember?
I remember the day you met me. I remember the day you came by my house and ate at my table. If you'd stayed at the door and talked, I would never have listened to you. I'd have thought you were just another religious maniac. But you came in, sat down, and listened to me. I remember the look on the people's faces when I gave them back the money I'd swindled from them. I remember the look when I gave them back twice as much as I had taken. And I remember how I cried. I was giving away all my money, and I cried because I was glad to get rid of it and make room for you.
I remember that day too, Matthew. Peter, have you made your mind up yet?
No, still thinking.
All right. Thaddeus, you never say much. Have you seen much?
I remember you crying.
Why?
Because I'd never seen a man crying, not in front of women, and certainly not in front of other men.
Are you afraid of your tears, Thaddeus?
No, not now.
Jim, we haven't heard from you.
I was thinking about the day you told the story about the Good Samaritan.
And what makes you remember that story in particular?
It put me off being a priest for life.
Really? Remind me to tell you the story of the prodigal son. It might put you off drink for life. Philip, what do you remember?
I remember the day you asked the cripple at the side of the lake if he wanted to get better. I'm sure if he could have walked, he'd have jumped up and booted you. I mean, he wasn't exactly lying there to get a suntan.
Sometimes you have to ask hard questions, Philip. Simon.
I'm thinking about another time you were hard on somebody. You remember the rich young boy who loved his parents and behaved well, but he didn't want to part with his money when you asked him. You were really hard on him.
So I was, Simon. You wanted me to apologize, didn't you? You wanted me to run after him and say, I didn't really mean it. You wanted him to get into the kingdom of heaven as easily as he got into the Rotary Club. But it's not like that. Is it, Judas?
I don't know. But if you want to know what I do remember, it only happened on Tuesday when you let that woman pour perfume all over your head.
The gifts of the poor, Judas. You have to receive the gifts of the poor.
But that could have been sold for a fortune.
I think we've had this argument already. Now, Peter, have you made up your mind yet?
The mountaintop. You and Moses and Elijah having a conversation. I still think somebody should have built a cairn or painted a picture of it or something.
Peter, what you saw was for your soul, not for your display cabinet. Now, do you remember your original question?
No, but what was it?
You asked me when you were going to see the kingdom, and all that you and the others have said proves to me that you have at least glimpsed it. Or whoever has known what you have known has experienced the kingdom. It is not of this world, but it happens in this world. It happens without you, and it happens within you. It is still to come, but it is already here. The feast has still to be held, but the invitations are going out.
And then, as they were sitting back, chewing over his words, he took a piece of bread,